Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another weekly episode of vBrownBag. This week, we are going to be continuing the IT career transition series. I still haven't come up with a good acronym for that. ITTC. There's nothing good for it. I was trying to find something cool, but it's not working out. This week, we have somebody that I've been chatting with on Twitter for a while now. We've been sharing weird Magic Mike gifts with each other, so I feel like we're very close, and we've reached that level of comfort with each other that we can send Magic Mike gifts. And we're going to talk about something that a lot of listeners and subscribers have been asking about: is the transition from anything going from non-technical to technical. How Caitlyn got into the business. She's got an interesting story, and she's got a couple of things that I'm curious about, especially her new book that's going to be coming out. So the title of this show tonight ostensibly is From Technically Challenged to Happy and Paid Developer with Caitlyn Greffly. And did I pronounce your last name properly? I just know you as the Kate code. So I'm not sure how to. What's your name, Steve?
You got it. Oh yeah, it looks like Greffly, but it's pronounced Steve. No,
Caitlyns
you got it. And yeah, happy to be here. I don't send Magic Mike gifts to just anyone. So
I felt special when we you can tell when somebody's like, you got that simpatico, you can start going, hey, is it okay? And then they send it, yeah, all right, we're friends. Okay, so before we get into it, let's do a couple of housekeeping notes. Getting on the conversation. If you are listening to this live from the audience, or if you are paying attention on vBrownBag, on Twitter, I will be hashtagging with vBrownBag and adding from vBrownBag. And if you want to communicate with us, if you want to ask some questions, I will be paying attention. I've got my tweet deck up over here. I've got my other stuff set up over here. And if you at vBrownBag or hashtag vBrownBag, I will be paying attention, and I will pose the questions to Caitlyn, Steve, and we will we'll get into it. So if you would follow her on Twitter at the Kate Code. She's got some fantastic. She tweets about interesting things. It's not always about tech. There's some good stuff in there. It's always a fun time. So with that, why don't I stop sharing? And what am I thinking? And for the people that are in the other time zones, we have the APAC, Brazil, EMEA, and Latin America channels as well. If you want to see the schedule for those things, go to the website, check out the podcast page, and you'll see the other schedules. Mine is better up to date and more salient than everybody else's because I'm amazing. So with that was a dig at the other hosts who haven't updated their channels or anything. So. Hi, good evening.
Hi, yeah, thanks. I was gonna apologize to anyone who goes to my Twitter for all of the recent deck related content, because I just built a deck in my backyard and I feel like suddenly I'm not tweeting about tech, I'm tweeting about decks, but deck with an E.
Right, and that's something that people sometimes, I find it fascinating that folks feel guilty about not tweeting about the thing that they are known for. And I actually enjoy it. I actually really like to see like the different facets of people, because I mean, I tweet about, this stuff and little else, but when I see other people do it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. She actually has, a life outside of development.
Wild, I know.
It's crazy talk. So you have been you've done a transition. Do you want to talk about, where you came from, what made you think about getting into it, how long you've been doing it? There's so many questions, and there's so many ways that we can approach this. How do you like to tell your story?
Yeah, I mean, so it is interesting. I've only been in tech now, I guess, a little over 2 years. And I came from the beer industry. I used to sell beer for about 7 years. Yeah. So I feel like people hear that and they're like, what a cool career. And it was for a while. I have my bachelor's degree in psychology from the UC Santa Cruz. Go Banana Slugs. Anyone that psychology or banana slugs? Because that would be
psychology.
Awesome.
I have a degree in psychology as well.
Yeah. Really fun degree, kind of useless other than just like chatting with people and stuff.
Right.
And and so I went immediately from that. I graduated right around the Great Recession and went and became a bartender, which actually I feel like really used my psychology degree. And from there, I just kind of accidentally ended up in the beer industry. And it was a lot of fun for a while, but it was kind of like being in a frat. There was a lot of alcohol, and not a lot of women. And I don't know if you've seen kind of the Me Too movement recently hit the beer industry in the last month or two. And
Really?
it's been wild to see everything come out, because in my experience, and I've seen certain breweries specifically being called out for, bad behavior, which as they should, but in my experience, it was across the board. It was just seen as something you dealt with, like if you're in the beer industry as a woman, or I imagine it's similar for people of color, then you just, it's because you can handle that stuff and you can deal with it. And that's always something. At the time I felt like weirdly proud, like, oh, I can handle this stuff and let it roll off my back. And in hindsight, I realized I should have said something, but this is a tangent.
I mean, we can take this wherever you want to go. I mean, this is a very easy show. It can be tech, it can be not tech, whatever.
I feel like, I could go on a couple tangents about the beer industry, but anyway, I got sick of it. I was traveling, like 3 out of every 4 weeks, going on the road. My territory was Central California up to the Canadian border. So beautiful territory. I got to see a lot of cool places, but I realized, when I was at like a very fancy hotel in Seattle eating amazing sushi and hating it, that I realized it was time to get out. I wasn't appreciating the perks anymore. So I had kind of a breaking point. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had spent a couple months realizing I can't be in this industry forever. I don't see, like, I see the people who work in the positions above me and I don't want their jobs, and I'm not happy with my job. And it was mainly motivated by unhappiness and just quality of life, really. And so I realized I wanted to get out. I didn't really know where I wanted to go. And so I just kind of was like Googling like things people change careers to, like changing careers in your 30s, because I was 31 at the time. And I was really starting with nothing. I was trying to think about like the things I enjoyed and the traits I had. And one of the things I like thought about was when I was in high school, and all through my childhood, really, I was really good at math and logic. And I was never told that there was anything particularly interesting to do with that except be a math teacher or an accountant. And not that there's a ton of math in the job that I do now, but I feel like it hits a similar part of my brain, the logic part. And so I ended up looking at like data science, because I love data visualizations. And I ended up getting rejected from a data science boot camp because I didn't know how to code. And so from there, I just was like, what, coding? Like, why would I have to know that for data science? And also, that's not something, my initial thought was that that's not something I'm interested in or would be good at. Like, I don't feel like I fit the idea I have in my head of a coder. Like, I'm not, a white guy sitting in a dark basement, like playing video games all day. Like that's, I think, legitimately the picture that popped in my head.
With the mullet and the big thick glasses, hacker man from the 80s. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just like, I just imagine that everyone in the tech industry was that same kind of person, which, like, nothing wrong with that kind of person at all. But like, I didn't see myself reflected in that. I thought, like, I'm an extrovert, I'm social, like I love working with people. I like going outside. I was used to a job that was always on the move. I wasn't sitting at a desk. And I remember even telling my parents about this idea, and they're like, "You're going to sit at a desk for 40 hours a week? Is it going to be dark? Are you going to like, are there going to be windows?" And I was just like, you can see, you can't see my office right now, but I'm surrounded by windows. There could be windows in coding. I'm here to tell people. And so it was really odd at first to me, like once I started looking into it, because like I said, my initial reaction was that's not me. But then I just kind of started playing around with it because I kind of was desperate, to be honest. Like I was desperate to get out of my career. And I was immediately hooked. I thought like, this is really fun. And I feel like it's like, it's analytical, but it's creative. And like, you get to, like, I, had that magical moment of seeing hello world, like printed on the web, be like, I did that. I could say whatever I want and it could be on the web. And I, could make it pretty if I want. Cause I just love things that are aesthetically pleasing. And yeah. And so I think from that moment, it was like 10 days between then and the time that I gave a boot camp all my money.
Okay. So let's talk about that transition a little bit, because so we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and some people are hurting, and they're desperate too. They're like, okay, what can I do with my life? Did you have some money socked away? Were you what was that transition like? Did you just stop doing what you were doing? Did you quit your job? You had a good stash set aside so that you could give money to a boot camp, and then you were able to, like, eat ramen noodles until your first IT gig? Or walk somebody that's thinking about this through that, because that's going to be a big fear. Like
totally. Yeah, I think like it is scary to throw money at something that you're not positive if you want to do that. It's hard to know. I feel like with anything in school or anything you learn in a boot camp, like it's hard to know how that's going to translate into like what the job will actually look like and if you'll actually like that job. So I definitely had those fears. My boot camp at the time was $9,000, and I think I had $10,000 in my savings account, and it was not meant for this. I was trying to save for a house. I made this decision fairly quickly. So it's not like I had been saving for this particular purpose. Obviously that was $9,000 was most of the money that I had. So
that was 90% of your money at the time.
Yeah. A little scary. So I decided I wasn't super comfortable with going into debt. So I decided to keep working for 3 months.
While you were in the boot camp.
Yeah. So the boot camp was 6 months. I was doing about 25 hours a week at the boot camp in those first 3 months, at least. I feel like the second set of 3 months that went up to maybe 40 hours a week. But in the beginning, because I was a remote worker for my brewery at the time, and I controlled my schedule, and a lot of my days were on the road. So I would get back to my hotel room with no one to hang out with. And it was
4 or 5 hours to code at night.
Yeah, it was easy for me to just like kind of have really long days. It also made me more efficient at my job. In hindsight, I feel like I powered through things a lot faster because I knew I had goals to get to at the end of the day.
Nice.
But yeah, so I worked for 3 months, saved up a little extra in that time, tried to be kind of frugal. And then the next 3 months where I was doing a lot more in the boot camp, because I was also trying to like apply for jobs. And I feel like things just got harder when I started doing back end and full stack. And during that time, I walked dogs for Rover and DogSat. I drove for Grubhub, and I did something called Coding with Kids, where I was teaching kids kind of how to code using this program online called Scratch, which if there's any parents out there with like elementary school age kids, I totally recommend it.
Yeah, I got my nephew turned on to Scratch.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a really cool experience, but they just weren't giving me a lot of hours. So then I was like, I basically had like for 3 or 4 months, I had like 3 different jobs that I was doing maybe 5 hours a week each, trying to like, cobble together enough money to pay rent. And,
Gotcha.
and then I'm burning through the rest of what I had. So yeah, it was financially stressful. I feel grateful that I had the money up front, because it felt less stressful to just pay it and forget about it and be like, I'm committed. I don't have to worry about the next monthly payment. I just want to do it and be like, I'm in it.
And you said at the 3-month mark, you started applying for jobs. Was that development jobs that you had started applying for, or was that?
I think I applied for my first dev job at 3 months and it was too early. I got I think it was a hacker rank technical challenge and I totally bombed it. It was just a horrible experience, but it was good. It was good. I mean, in hindsight, I was like, okay, well, now I know I can do horribly and survive. Like I'm still alive.
Right.
And then I think I started applying for more jobs, maybe around, I guess it was like August when I applied for the job I ended up getting, which would be about like five months after, 5 months into the boot camp. So probably closer to then when I started applying more.
And 5 months into the boot camp was when you started feeling like really confident with your skills and that could translate well into a your first development role?
Confident is a strong word. I don't even know if I feel confident now. I think like I felt poor and I felt like it was time to get a job. And
desperation and pressure, those are strong motivators.
And I felt like I had learned a lot and I tried to focus on the things that I could control when I went into these interviews. Cause yeah, that first interview, I was like, well, I have no algorithms memorized. I generally did not feel like I had code memorized. That was something that felt really hard to do as a boot camper because you're learning a lot really fast. And then there's still like so much you don't know. Like even at any stage in your career as a developer, there's so much you don't know. And so just thinking about like the technical questions they could possibly ask and whether or not I would have learned that and I would know it. And then also on top of that, whether or not I'd be able to like fetch it out of the depths of my brain fast enough felt just like so overwhelming. And so I tried to focus instead on like the things I could control, like how I was to have a conversation with, like how I communicated, like if someone asked me something I didn't know, like how I responded to that with like, you know, being like, oh, that's interesting. And like, I don't know if I've learned that. Like if I have, I can't remember, but I'd be really excited to like go home and look it up. I'm going to write that down. Like, I'm so excited to like learn more, just show like a passion for learning, show like try and prove myself as someone would want to work with and teach things to. And so I think that helped a lot in those interviews to like, I don't know. I was just trying to make myself not totally panic because if I thought about all the possible technical questions someone would ask me, I remember describing this to my partner who's not in tech at all. And I was just like, imagine that someone told you were going to have a history test tomorrow and they didn't specify. They just said history. And you're like, how do I study for that? How do I study? Like, can you give me a country or like a time period or like something more specific? And I just felt like it was
history.
It was like going into a history test, be like, I have no idea whether I'm going to know these questions. So.
Well, yeah. I think you're right. What you just described is denotes that you would be an amazing consultant. Because a lot of times it is, you know, admitting to what you don't know, figuring out how you would solve that problem in the abstract, and then going away and then getting the tactical knowledge to actually solve the problem. So yeah, let me know if you need a job.
And I love that too, because coming from sales, it was completely the opposite. You were never supposed to say that you didn't know something. I remember a previous boss telling me, if you don't know, make something up. And if it's wrong, then you can send them an email later correcting yourself. So it was like, people would ask like the cost per ounce of something. And I'd be like, 18 cents. And that's like what they wanted me to do. And they'd be like, oh, I don't know. I was like a good guess. So I loved that I was coming into a community where people were like, it's better to like, now that I'm in it, I don't think I knew this at the time, but it's like, it's better to say when you don't know something, because a lot of people don't know things, and that's how you learn. And that's how your team knows like how they can help fill the gaps in your knowledge. And that's how
Right.
you can help your teammates like succeed. And so I just love that. Maybe I've gotten lucky. I hope it's like that at every company, but I feel like the companies I've been at, it's everyone's so supportive and like very, very supportive of you not knowing something, especially as a junior, when I felt like I love a low bar. I felt like there was such a low bar for me coming into my first job of like, this girl probably knows basically nothing. And so I could ask any question I wanted. And I think I still try and do that.
I try when I go into a room, I just try to I try to tell everybody immediately that I am the dumbest person in the room. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask all the beginner questions, and that way we can get to it. So I'm totally there with you.
Set the bar low. It's great. Then all you
love
can
that
do
approach.
is, yeah.
It drives the people that I work with bananas, but
Yeah, whatever.
Actually, so Graham said something that kind of it resonates. Actually, if you can say it depends, you can be a consultant. And
Yeah.
and that's not inaccurate. I mean, whenever somebody asks you for a defined question, there's a lot of vagary that can be made around it. Okay, sorry. So back to you. Sorry.
I like the tangents.
You said that you were an extrovert, and that your impression of the coding world was, throw somebody in a dark hole and toss Twinkies at them and watch them grind out with code. Has your extroversion, post bartender life, post beer industry, the extroversion that you brought to that, the salesmanship, has that helped or hindered you as a developer?
If anything, it's helped. Yeah, I feel like I've said this to like the company I work at. I'm at Nike now as a contractor, and I've been there 4 months. And I think in my interview, they asked how I was handling remote life. And I was like, well, to be honest, I would rather be in an office, at least more often. Like, I think we're going back to 3 days a week, and that's perfect for me, because I do get energy off of other people. But when forced to be online and over Slack, it forces me to over communicate. So I'll be like, I reach out to, people on the team that I feel like are kind of like friends also, like, because we just chat all the time. And I just always want to like talk about what I'm working on, even if I like don't have anything to say other than like, this sucks, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I just like, I like to chat. And so I feel like it's probably that just helped me be a better communicator, because I think I'm doing it selfishly. Like I'm self-serving with my communication. Like, I'm doing it because I just want to talk to people. But I think it probably helps me be a good teammate, because other people know what I'm up to. And like, especially in remote life, I feel like that's pretty important to communicate. So yeah, I feel like it's helped. And I also feel like I've met other extroverts. Like, I don't feel like, maybe we're in the minority in tech as a whole, but I don't feel like there's none of us here. So.
Well, I find that in the community space, the extroverts kind of glom together. The people sometimes get into tech because computers are easier to deal with than people. At least that's the way that it used to be. Nowadays, I think that it helps in certain regards, and in other regards. If you're hired for a role where you're going to, need to be that guy that's put in a deep dark hole and had Twinkies thrown at them and just, grind out whatever, then, that's gonna kill your soul eventually. For roles where you need to communicate, especially like in, remote development roles and things of that nature. I find that it's a benefit. You might not be able to tell this, but I am also an extrovert.
Well, and I feel like it's helped me get opportunities like this to like talk to people, because people are like, you want to talk? I'm like, yeah, like I'd love to meet new people. Like, let's chat about whatever you want. I'm there.
Yep, exactly.
So,
we should get you on some panel chats. Oh, that would be super fun.
Yeah, fun. Yeah. I did one for the Act W. I kind of led a panel about women in tech. That was really fun. So yeah.
I saw you talking about that, but I didn't actually watch it.
Yeah.
I need to go back and review that.
I kind of forget what I said. It was maybe helpful.
Well, that's what happens
Who knows?
when you get on stage. You don't remember
Yeah.
anything that you said. It's just you blank out and then you get off stage. That's how it goes.
Hope that went well. I guess we'll see.
Whatever you do, don't watch the recording afterwards. You're just like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that.
No.
Okay, so let's okay. So you've finished the 5th month. You got the role with Nike. That's the role that you're in now, or?
No, I was at a different company before as approved. They're a local company in Portland. They do corporate legal e-discovery software, which of course had been my dream.
Yeah, who doesn't want to get into that?
Yeah, it was interesting getting that role. I don't know. I feel like I don't know if I've really talked about it since I've not been there anymore, because it was a really great experience. I don't think I could have asked for a better first job. Because everyone was supportive. I learned a lot, and I got to do a lot of things. And it was a smaller company, maybe 60 developers. So I felt like there was a lot I got to do, like front end, back end, like doing Terraform stuff, a lot of AWS stuff. Like I got to touch a lot of different things. But to be honest, when I heard about that role, it was someone at my boot camp that reached out and was like, oh, I know the hiring manager here. Look at this role. I was like, what? No, no, partially because, to be honest, corporate legal e-discovery was not like, my dream of what I wanted to get into.
That didn't call to you?
No, I know nothing about legal stuff. I tried to describe every time for the year and couple months that I worked there that someone asked what I did. I was like, in like lawyer shows, when there's always like those interns walking in with boxes of papers and the lawyers have to go through it and they're like, oh, discovery. I was like, that's what we do, but like e-discovery. We try and make that faster. So it was like, yeah, thrilling stuff. But, and then the stack wasn't even what I had learned. I was learning React and Node in Bootcamp, and the stack was Angular and C#. And it's weird because when I saw the job posting, I was like, I'm not qualified for this and I'm not particularly interested, but I'm not in a position to say like, no, thank you to an introduction to a hiring manager. So I just said yes. And I kept saying yes. And the interviews kept going. And I thought, what have I done? And then I got the job, and I remember in the final interview, I met the team, and that was the first time that I actually wanted the job. Was like, I just kept going through the process thinking, well, they'll eliminate me at some point and I won't have to worry about this. And then I met the team and I was like, well, I want to work with those people. They all seem really great and nice. And then I was all of a sudden invested and ended up getting the job, and I'm really glad I did. But then after a little over a year, I was like, I do want to do something I'm more interested in. I do want to do more front end. And yeah, Nike is awesome for that. So.
Okay. So it's the 5th month of the boot camp. And the boot camp themselves did the introduction for the job. So people are going to be asking like, okay, so I'm doing the boot camp. How easy is it to get that first gig? Is everybody scrambling for a beginner developer, or because I see people on Twitter, and I think you've been a part of a couple of these conversations where they're looking for the full stack developer with 12 years of experience in a stack that has only been around for 3 years, and there's not, I don't see a lot of asks for like a brand new, fresh out of boot camp person. Totally. Were you an anomaly, or is the need for developers so great that they're like, okay, yes, we'll get somebody that doesn't have this particular stack, and they'll skill up while they're on? Is that how that happened?
I think I got lucky. I think like my hiring manager at the time said, to be honest, if you're coming out of a boot camp, we're going to have to basically teach you everything anyway. So it doesn't really matter if it's the right stack. Like the things you learn in boot camp are like the tools. I think the like biggest takeaways are the tools of how to solve a problem.
Okay.
And so they said like, it's like, you're going to have so much to learn. The learning curve is going to be huge, regardless of if this is your stack or not. Like it's going to take you a couple months to get up and running. So it's not that, and like Angular to React, it's like, you know, it's still JavaScript based. I don't know if I would have been able to hop to something totally different. But I feel like I did get lucky in terms of how quickly I got a job. And I was told I was one of 200 applicants for that job. So to answer your question, yes, there are way more applicants than there are jobs, I think. Yeah, just in general at the lower levels, I don't see enough people hiring for junior developers. It actually, like, it really bothers me because I feel like people are begging for senior developers, but they're not willing to train up a junior. And I know that in some companies, if you're really small, like, it's not possible, but it's like these senior developers aren't growing on trees. If you want one, you can grow one. You can grow one yourself. Like, I'll teach you how.
They
just
actually
bring
are
one
growing
in.
on
Yeah.
trees. You just have to have a little patience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I did get lucky. I know it can take people a long time.
Okay. So you said something that was interesting. The hiring manager there said that we're going to have to train you up regardless of what stack you learned. So was there stuff that you did not learn in the boot camp that you had to pick up? I mean, you know, stack differences aside, were there things that the boot camp didn't do that you, when you got to like the real world? I mean, is it like high school and then the real world where you learned math, but now you have to pay bills, or
Yeah.
was so, okay. So what
Oh,
were the
I mean,
misses?
a little bit. I think legacy code is the first thing I would say. Like, it depends on the company you're getting into, obviously, but like, I created a bunch of apps from scratch in Bootcamp, and I think you would do that if you're a self-taught developer. I don't know how it works if you're going through a CS degree. I just think a lot of people learning to code, you create stuff from scratch, which is great. But then you get to a company and they're like, I think my first ticket was like, this button looks kind of funky, like the text is centered weird or something. And it was like, oh, that's really easy to fix. But then it's like, find the button. Like, where's the button in the code? And then like trying to, like, that was a skill I don't think I had, was like, okay, so I see this here, like, how do I find it here, like in the code? And then what, like, is this the same button that's on multiple pages? Like, I ended up changing something and ended up messing with a button on a page that I didn't even know existed because I wasn't even familiar with the product yet.
Right.
And so it was like, there was just a lot of that. There was a lot of jargon that I was unfamiliar with, like, just it might have been covered in my boot camp. I don't know, who knows. But it was like talking about sprints, like dealing with someone. There was someone on my team. There was a scrum master, there was a product manager, there was a product owner. And it was like, what do these people do? And why are they telling me what to do and not my engineering manager? Because I came from a world in which my manager in sales was a person who told me what to do. And then I got to engineering and my manager was like the person who was supportive and helpful and, like, I don't know, sort of became a therapist to me as I was going through all this. So there was just like there was a lot of jargon, and it probably wasn't helped by the fact that I was in a legal company. So then there was legal jargon. And then there was just a lot of code already there. And that was hard to handle, I think.
So would in your book, do you talk? I mean, like, are you like in the book? Do you say, well, here's a chapter on agile, and here's all the words that you're going to run into when your feet hit the pavement? And if you want to talk about the book later, we can talk about the book later. But I have so many questions, and we have so little. You know what? That's not fair. We have all the time in the world. We can
all the time in the world.
We do. It's 5:30 your time.
Yeah, I know, it's early. Yeah, I have a chapter on jargon because I think that was something that was overwhelming to me. And yeah, it's just, I like, even if someone told me what a sprint was, which very good chance my boot camp told me what a sprint was, I got to work and I did not know what it was. And I just, like, having like a reference guide would have been very handy for me. And so I'm creating it.
A cheat sheet.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And so I don't know, the other things that I've kind of mentioned that I felt like were gaps of, like, yeah, not knowing who the product owner was and what they do, like that. I feel like I was confused about that for like a year as to like who did what and who controlled what, and who was telling me what to do, and what was the hierarchy, and all of that. And so that's another thing that I talk about is the different roles, like talking about SRE and DevOps and different kind of jobs that people have in tech that might be adjacent to you as a developer, and what all those people do. That was something that was like very nerve-wracking for me, because I wanted to like interact with all these people, but I was almost afraid to, because I was like, what if I ask them a question that's not, that I should be asking, the Scrum Master or like someone completely different. And so the job titles like really confuse me.
Was there a lot, and I guess it's a silly question, but did you find that there was a lot of fear in like, I immediately tell people I'm the dumbest person in the room. So when I get in there, I then immediately prove it. So when you're not supposed to nod that quickly, Caitlyn. We've only known each other online. You're not supposed to go, yeah, we know, Chris. Trust me,
there's not many people in this room, so
yeah, one of us is an idiot, and it's not you. Hey,
hey.
All right. So was it fear of looking silly? Was it, fear for your job? Was it what was keeping you? I mean, obviously this was a book that you felt needed to be written. And I can't wait for you to talk more about it, because if this is like all of the things that aren't being said, that, if you've done the boot camp, you've gotten into the gig, here's the shim, here's all of the things that is the shim layer between, wet behind the ears coder fresh from boot camp to seasoned professional Caitlyn Greffly badass. That's gonna be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a better title than I would give myself, but
oh, come on now.
Yeah, I feel like there was a question at the beginning of that statement that I forgot what it was that you were asking me.
The book, so let's go through
the like the fear. It was the fear. Okay.
Yes.
So, yeah. A lot of my fear just came from within. Like I had and continue to have like a very supportive team that like you mess up and like, no, you don't get in trouble. Like, I think like I always had a fear of like my tickets rolling to the next sprint, especially coming from sales where there's hard numbers and there's deadlines. And I was like very obsessed with, I committed to this work. It has to be done by this day. Like I need to get it done by this day. And if I don't, I will be in trouble. And that was like very much my mentality. And it was totally internal. There was no one like, I don't know if this is normal, but the 2 jobs I've worked at, stuff rolls over the line in sprints all the time. Like, I mean, not everything, but it happens. And it's usually, sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes like usually the team already knows why it's rolling. Like, oh, the scope increased, or like this ended up being harder than I thought. Or in my case, like I've never done this before and I'm just slower. And there was always support for that. And in terms of like talking to people who did different jobs, like I was never, if I asked someone the wrong question, they'd be like, I don't know, maybe you should ask, this other person. Like no one ever said anything mean or like threatened to fire me. Like, don't ask me that, you're fired. And so
wow, you're looking at a great place. No.
It was a lot different from my previous career where you could get called out for a lot of stuff pretty easily, even if it wasn't the wrong thing to do. There was just I feel like there was a lot of egos.
I used to bartend too. So I had the same path as you. Psychology turned bartender and we talked a little bit about this before too. So I'm very familiar with the issues inherent in alcohol distribution.
And I feel like a lot of this just sounds like imposter syndrome, which I think it was and continues to be. Like, it's just hard. It's hard to fight that internal fear of saying like, you don't know what you're doing. Like, you have no idea what anyone's talking about, but just like, I tried to like hook on to like, one if I was listening to someone talk for a while, I'd hook on to like one thing that they said that I didn't understand. Because there was probably like in the beginning, there was at least like 10 things anyone said in a given like sentence that I didn't understand. So I'd ask about like one thing, just like chip away, just be like, okay, now I know what that one thing is, like write it down. And then the next time, you know, if they said the same thing, they could ask about one other thing in that sentence. It's just like, okay, all right, now I know two things. And that's kind of just how I approached the fear.
Okay, so let's talk about your book. When's it coming out? What's what is it in, what in there are you most proud of, and why should we all go out and buy it and read it immediately?
So the book is called The Bootcampers Companion, and even though it's called that because it's catchy, it's also, I think, would be good for self-taught developers who are trying to go that route. I don't have as much knowledge about what someone with a CS degree learns, so maybe helpful, maybe not. But I'm basically trying to, fill the gaps from like my experience in the boot camp. And I've talked to a lot of folks. I feel like it almost seems like weekly, someone will reach out to me who's going through boot camp or going the self-taught route. And it's just like, you did it. Can you like give me advice or tell me what to do? And so I've had a lot of the same conversations with people. And I was like, I could write this stuff down and give it to them. And and I just feel like there's a lot of doubt. And so I'm having fun writing it. In theory, I want to be done with it by the end of August. To be honest, like COVID lifted, I'm an extrovert, I'm like making up for lost time, I'm having trouble sitting down at my computer after work, but that is still my goal. So hopefully late summer, early fall at least. And yeah, I want more people to feel like they can come into tech. I feel like there's good careers here. I am a success story. I like do have pretty much nothing but positive things to say about my career thus far and how supportive everyone has been and the money I'm making and how much of a work-life balance I have and how happy I am in general. And so I just want to help give people another added resource that they can turn to, because I know there's a lot of technical help out there, and this is not a technical book. It's talking about titles. And I mean, I do touch on like kind of different stacks. I think that was another thing that was super scary for me at first. I remember someone asked me once, like, oh, like, when I was going through boot camp, like, oh, well, do you know the LAMP stack? And I was like, what's the LAMP stack? And they laughed at me. And that was one of the only times that I was ever treated,
did you kick him in the shins immediately?
I should have. I looked at the company they were working on that said on their name tag, and I wrote it down. And I was like, do you not work there?
Right,
now
totally.
I know.
No,
So
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that was like one of my only negative experiences, but I did feel like the language jargon was very scary for me, like what the different stacks are, like what is Java and what is JavaScript and why do they have almost the same name and are they related, and all this kind of stuff. So I just want to help folks feel a little less overwhelmed and give them a cheat sheet for some of the stuff that I felt like came up for me often. And then I talk about networking too. And I mean, I don't
networking IP addresses or networking meeting people?
Meeting people.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't call it networking because nobody likes that word. And I feel like when you're going through boot camp, everyone says, you got to network, and you get really sick of it. But creating a community is really important, whether it's for getting a job or not, just to like have other people that are going through what you're going through or that you can learn from or whatever. I feel like creating a community was like the best thing I've done for my career.
So you did touch upon something, and if you're comfortable talking about it, your salary, like so you're talking about the money's good, and if this is a question that I can ask, or if it's a question I can't ask, you tell me to go stuff. That's perfectly fine too. Expectations, like somebody fresh out of boot camp, what are they looking at? And is that regionally dependent? You said that you're remote working, so did they say, okay, well, you're not living in San Francisco, so we can give you 20% less, or is that something that you can talk about?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I feel like salary transparency is awesome. I also feel like if you're changing careers into a field, then you have every right to know what kind of money you're going to make on the other side. Like it's cool to be interested in a field, but we all have bills to pay. So I live in Portland, Oregon, and I have done a little data collection on salary by level and by job title, which is also part of the book. And I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but I know what I made. So my first gig, I started at 65,000. It was a company based in Portland, Oregon. So it was like regional. I think that would be higher in San Francisco, but for Portland, felt pretty good. My previous job, I'd been in the beer industry 7 years. Like I said, I was making 75,000. So it was a bit of a dip, but it felt like a really high starting place for me. It was like, okay, if this is like the lowest I'm ever going to make, then it's fine to start here and then go up from here. I'm going to have more earning potential than I ever did in beer.
And was that as an FTE or as a contractor?
That was a full-time.
Okay.
So yeah, I also had really good benefits there. They had unlimited PTO, which I've heard can, be a pro or a con at that company. People actually took their PTO. Everyone took, I feel like 3 to 4 weeks a year off. So it was really good.
I would take 17.
Yeah.
Unlimited. Peace.
Yeah.
That's why they don't do it any place I work at, because they know
regret this. Yeah.
We can't do it because Chris is here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And yeah, so I really, I feel like that was a really good starting place for me. I got like one little raise while I was there. And then I got this opportunity at Nike. So I'm a contractor, and as a contractor, I don't get as many benefits. I get way fewer benefits. I don't get, I think I get a couple sick days that are paid, but I basically don't get paid time off. I'm not paid on holidays that I take off. And I do get help with health insurance, mine, but not my partner's, which I used to be able to cover. And medical insurance I do get, but I pay like $250 out of pocket per month for it, which is, I don't know, it's medium. That's okay, but it's good health insurance. And I have an hourly rate. So hourly rates, to be honest, mean like nothing to me. It's $60 an hour, but I immediately have to convert that to salary. So if I was to work 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, that would be 125. And that was a huge jump from my previous job. Of course, I had to like subtract, like assuming I take the same like 3 weeks off during the year, and I subtracted some other stuff that was in there. It was like still down to like 115 or something. So I feel like I like sharing this because my mind was like blown when I realized that I can make this early in my career. And it's awesome. Like I'm getting married in November, partially because I can afford a wedding now because of this. Yeah, thanks. But that was like, it was not something that was on the table really before. It was like, weddings are for people who have parents with money. Like that was my thought in my head. And like, that's awesome, but that wasn't my situation. And so I got this role at Nike and was like, shoot, got some extra money. This is literally like it's making a financial impact on my life and how comfortable I am. And building a deck, apparently wood is very expensive these days. Everyone I talked to when I was building that deck was like, the cost of lumber is way up. I was like, yes, thank you. I did. Thank you, Nike, for helping me build my deck.
with an E. Wait. All right. So we are coming up to the end of this, but I wanted to make sure that when somebody comes up to you and they say, okay, what's like the one piece of advice? There's somebody that they've decided that they do want to get into coding. They've plunked down the money for the boot camp. They haven't started yet. Or, well, actually, no, your one piece of advice. I'm not going to paint the picture of the ideal candidate for the target of the knowledge. What's your advice to somebody that's like, coding?
I mean, I kind of touched on earlier, like building a community. I feel like that's super important. And then like once you have like a small community, like Twitter has been amazing for my career, honestly. And I feel like once you have a small community, don't be afraid to like learn in public and ask for what you need. Like I think like one of the biggest things I did that impacted was I sent a tweet once when I had, I don't know, probably like 500 followers. I was pretty new to Twitter. And I just sent a tweet saying like, I'm looking for a way to put my boot camp into context. Like, can I shadow anyone for a day at their job or a couple hours or whatever?
I remember that.
Yeah, I think I hashtag like PDX tech. I didn't know what I was doing. Women who code, and did not have a lot of followers. I ended up shadowing at 6 different companies, and like just from that tweet, and one of them was Nike, and that was how I got connected to the person who ultimately got me this job now. And
That's
one of
fantastic.
them was like, yeah, there's like, people were just so nice. Like I shadowed at Columbia and some like smaller companies, and people just like responded to me. It was like, you don't know me, you don't owe me anything. But people are just seem really happy to like help folks like get into tech. I mean, that's probably why I'm doing this, like why I'm writing this book, why I talk to people, is because I almost feel like I want to pay it forward from how kind and like giving of their time people were with me when I was getting into it. I just feel like there is a great community in tech. And so tapping into that like is only going to bring you opportunities. And yeah.
Nice. So make a Twitter account.
I mean, I did on the first day of my boot camp. That was like, I didn't know anyone in tech. And I was like, the only way I'm going to meet people is something. And Twitter seemed like where tech people are. And there are a lot of tech people there. And even just when I tweeted, like, I think a couple months in, I tweeted like, oh, React is hard. Like, how does anyone like understand this? And I got like the most amazing resources. I had people messaging me being like, if you're stuck on something, feel free to reach out. It just felt like I could say whatever I was feeling stupid about, and I would only get like support back. I know that's not always the case, and that hasn't always been the case, but I've mostly felt like there's a very good community there.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. Well, I have harangued you with questions for, do you remember the Click and Clack, the Tappert brothers, the car talk show?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You've wasted yet another perfectly good hour with Chris and Caitlyn. No.
Yeah.
So unless members of the audience have a question, there's been a lot of comments, but I haven't seen any questions.
Wood is stupid expensive.
Wood is stupid expensive. That's a nice deck. Thanks, not Graham. DEC. Haha, nerd joke. Depends. No medical insurance. More money, less money. Yeah. Yep. I think we anything that you want to talk about in regards to how, if somebody wants to get your book, it's not going to come out until August, but are you publishing it yourself? Is it going to be on Amazon? How do we get you some book royalties? How do I get residuals, more importantly?
Yeah. I would say follow me on Twitter. I'm going to be updating stuff there. It won't be the physical book. It'll be an ebook, and I will figure out how to get that out to humans at some point. So, yeah. Cool. Just follow me. And like, I'm always happy to chat. Like I said, extrovert. If you have any questions, reach out.
Well, I'm very excited to read it. I think it'll be fun. I have questions too, because not knowing what I don't know about that transition phase, that would be fun to see that through your eyes.
Cool.
Nice. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for, oh wait, hold on. There's a Q&A. Somebody put a question in the Q&A.
Wow.
What are you looking forward to most about your future in coding? Oh, good question, Roger.
I feel like there's so many opportunities in this industry. I feel like I'll think about like one thing that I really want to get into, and then I'll get distracted and think about another thing that's really exciting. So like recently I've been really excited about UX, like becoming maybe like specifically a UX engineer at some point. I feel like UX is very much like the crux of my my coding skills and the fact that I have a background in psychology. Like I love thinking about things from the user's perspective. And like, I love the idea of like, yeah, user research and talking to people and figuring out how they want it to work and getting inside people's heads. So like,
nice.
that's what I'm currently really excited about. But I don't know, ask me again in a month, it could be something different. I just feel like, I feel like I'm excited that there's always something to be excited about. And there's always something different to learn, and that'll never stop. So, yeah.
Okay. Actually, two more questions before we wrap. What is your, I'm using Mike Kennedy's last two sign off questions because it's actually a fascinating two set of questions. Your IDE of choice
VS
is
Code.
what? VS Code. Okay. That's your go-to. No, shall not divert. Okay. And if you were going to learn a language today as a newbie, if somebody is like picking up a self-taught book, what would you say? Okay, learn this to start with, and then branch out from
probably
there.
COBOL.
It's not COBOL.
Yeah, seriously.
No.
So someone asked me this recently, who wanted to get into front end, and I was like, React, do JavaScript, React all day. I feel like I'm very front end leaning. So that's what I would say right now. I feel like there's the most jobs in React. I feel like when I was in Angular, I was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to get out of Angular. And
what does that mean? Not going to get out of Angular.
I felt like I was going to be pigeonholed. Like every React job I looked at wanted React experience, and I had learned it in Bootcamp, but I didn't have like on the job experience with it. And I was afraid that it was going to be hard for me to like get a React job without having had a React job, which was annoying. But yeah. So I feel like, and I felt like there were way more job postings in React for front end. For back end, I don't know if I would be the person to ask on like what the go-to would be there, because I use it. I'm a full stack developer, but I don't have a preference, and I don't know. I know like the Stack Overflow developer survey. I look at that thing for like, what is the most popular language? What is, what's actually being used? What are places actually hiring for? I feel like that's another resource that I send to people who are thinking about getting into the field, to be like, if you're wondering like what you should actually learn, like this is what people are doing, this is what people like using. And I feel like that's a good resource for that.
That's a good idea. I'll put that in the show notes for the show so for people to click on. I'll run a couple more show notes past you to make sure that we add any links to to both you and some more research that people can get into in the area. Awesome. Well, Caitlyn, Steve, thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, might change my name to that. It's just so catchy.
So Greffly, the G is silent. Is that what you're saying? It's Steve. Just call me Steve.
My new Twitter handle.
Cool. Well, thanks a bunch, folks. You can follow Caitlyn Greffly at the Kate Code, TheCaitCode. She's got some great information on Twitter about building decks, about coding, about all kinds of fun stuff, and a book that's coming out in August. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Cool. Thanks.
And stop.